My next guest is many things. Among them, he's a Harvard-educated lawyer, provocateur, and TV personality. And the key word being personality. If I see Eli on TV, I put my paintbrush down and watch. Because he gives us the cold, hard facts with just a spoonful of humor to make the medicine go down that much easier. So welcome, Eli.
Thanks for having me. No pressure. I have to be interesting and stuff.
You could do it. You could do it one hand behind. Now, you were also the editor of Above the Law, right?
I was. That was before I stepped up to the Nation. The Above the Law is a great blog. It's really focused on law and legal issues for lawyers. And I had that job for 11 years before I went to the Nation full time last year to be their justice correspondent.
Uh-huh. Now, that was established in 2006, 10 years before Trump. Did you ever, in your wildest nightmares, think that we would have a president who is actually above the law?
You know, obviously I didn't. I wrote, I think in early 2015, I wrote an entire well-reviewed post about how Trump's nascent candidacy wasn't real because as soon as the FEC, Federal Elections Commission, made him release his tax returns, he would drop out of the race. Yeah. I guess technically I could still be right about that, but in force and effect, I mean, I was desperately wrong about Trump's the reality of a Trump presidency. But Michael, you know what I wasn't wrong about, and what I did see coming is the FedSocization of our legal system, right? And it's something that we don't kind of talk about enough, I feel. But like Trump only exists because there has been an entire Republican structure put in place to prop up exactly this kind of crazy, bigoted, authoritarian strongman. And on the legal side, that work has been done by this thing called the Federalist Society, which is kind of a group of arch-conservative lawyers who are really focused on courts and getting judges appointed. And I've written about the FedSoc for years, and I've kind of always seen the threat that they pose now being, realized in the likes of Brett Kavanaugh and Bill Barr.
My God, it's scary. I can't wait to see how this movie ends. I'm a little nervous, but now he's gotten more and more emboldened in his quest for authoritarian rule. I'm afraid to look at the news every morning. I'm afraid to wake up and peek. But is there any way we can stop him?
You know, I think that we are beyond legal measures now because he controls the law, right? Because Bill Barr has turned out to be the worst attorney general in American history, right? Just the most corrupt attorney general, the one who has no commitment to the objective law and only commitment to Donald Trump, because he seems to believe in a theory of executive power that is more like what England had under King George III as opposed to what the American Revolution was all about. Because of all of these things, the legal measures to stop Trump's kind of authoritarian power grabs are very limited. What we do have, and what we've seen can work is people in the streets, right? We always have the right of civil disobedience. We always have the ability to protest. And when we protest, when we get out and march and activate and fight and scream and, make ourselves, put our bodies in front of the stormtroopers, that is what we have left now.
Well, and he's doing everything he can to take that away from us. No, I mean, those federal goons, I mean, it's a little scary. It's not that much different than what's going on in Hong Kong, what was going on in Hong Kong and other places.
Absolutely. But you also have to look at the kind of the story of protest, not just in our country. I'm so glad you brought up Hong Kong, but throughout the world. I noted last week last week when we were taping this, that people saw that there was this huge explosion in Lebanon of a fireworks factory. And it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was incompetence. It was, they had left these fireworks. People had been complaining about it, and it exploded, and it killed, like 15 people. The Lebanese government fell.
Yeah.
In a week, because people were like, we will not stand for this level of incompetence. Go back to a year and a half ago. The Puerto Rican government fell because people took it, right? So let's be clear. People getting activated, people getting in the streets and demanding better from their government works here, and it works worldwide. It just takes a level of it takes real commitment, though. It takes risk. People who have been out there protesting, risking this terrible pandemic, but they're also risking, as you point out, Michael, they're risking the stormtroopers. They're risking the rubber bullets. They're risking the tear gas and the pepper spray. And Trump might make us risk more before it's over. And that's kind of scary to contemplate, but be assured it works. People who are willing, I've said a lot ever since he was elected about the resistance. It is easy. It is easy to get people who are willing to fight and kill for something they believe in. That's actually easy. And that's actually not super helpful. What's helpful and what's hard is when people are willing to die for what they believe in, right? And what we've started to see over the summer, basically, is that critical, important change. People who are not ready to hurt others for what they believe, but who are ready or willing to be hurt themselves for what they believe. And once you get that level of resistance, that's when things can change.
It's sad what it takes to get that level of resistance. That's the problem.
And it's not something, this is supposed to be a democracy. Like, this is people shouldn't have to risk their lives to vote, right? People shouldn't have to risk their lives to have a postal service. He's putting us into he's forcing us into terrible choices. But what we're starting to see is people willing to make those terrible choices, and at the risk of life and limb.
I've been an activist for equal justice, and against police brutality for a few years, a little bit ahead of the curve. So it's nice to see finally what you're talking about is that now it's a world of difference. I was the only white-headed guy I saw in those protests 5-6 years ago, and now it's great. Everybody has so it is possible to make change. And
look, I covered, one of the things I've lamented is the fact that, we were talking about Above the Law earlier. Everything that I wrote on Above the Law after Michael Brown was killed, everything that I wrote on Above the Law after Ferguson, after Eric Garner was killed, everything I wrote Above the Law talking about Sean Bell being killed, I could write today in The Nation about the death of George Floyd, and Rayshard Brooks, and the lack of arrest of Breonna Taylor's killers, and all of that. There is a deja vu for some of my posts. One of the only differences between now and 5 years ago after Ferguson, or 10 years ago after Bell, is the multi-racial, multi-ethnic tenor of these protests, right? If you look at Ferguson, it was primarily a black crowd, and brown crowd willing to take to the streets. You look at George Floyd, it's all those same black people. I mean, we're still here. We didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But now we've been joined by some people who seem more interested in being allies, and that is hopeful.
That is hopeful. Well, things have to get really, really bad before people are motivated to make change. I think that if Hillary, I had said this the other day, if Hillary had been elected, the status quo would have stayed the same, and we wouldn't have had all those white people out there. But Trump is such a racist. That white people are saying, "Oh, come on, this is too much for me."
He swallows the dog whistle. I mean, like, again, I like to point out Trump exists because of a larger support system that's been in place for decades, right? But Trump says the quiet part out loud. Trump makes it undeniable. All these people, oh, was that really supposed to be racist? Trump's like, yes, that was supposed to be racist, right? And so it makes it obvious.
It's always a hot mic. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And why is say Mitt Romney, every elected Republican willing to give up our democracy and our economy and everything else just to stay, because they're afraid of him? Does that shock you? That surprises me.
It's power. I mean, again, there's nothing we can talk about. There are Republicans like Mitt Romney who don't like Trump's rhetoric. They don't like what he says. They don't like his manner. But the policies, all Trump does is deliver these Republicans victories on issues that they could not win with popular election, right? They cannot get their bigotry kind of rubber stamped at the ballot box anymore. Trump delivers them victory in the form of arch conservative justices who will do the work of restricting voter rights and gerrymandering districts and tamping down gay and lesbian rights, right? Like, Trump delivers them those victories. They couldn't get these tax cuts we're in the middle of a recession and pandemic. They couldn't get these tax cuts from somebody else, but Trump delivers them that, right? So what these Republicans want is what they've always wanted, power, and Trump delivers them that power. He does it in a manner that some of them, don't like, but they like what they like the check in the mail, They don't maybe like the packaging of it, but they like the package.
Well, they're not thinking that far ahead, I believe, because Trump has no loyalty to anyone. I mean, Michael Cohen, asked him. And just this morning, I was listening to him bad-mouthing the governor of Florida, right?
Yeah, but I mean...
So if he gets in, he's king for life. He doesn't need them. They won't have power. It'll just be him.
But he doesn't actually have a policy agenda, right? His only policy agenda is, if Obama did it, then no. So it's people like Stephen Miller who have an entire kind of white nationalist philosophy that they want to get through, that actually kind of control the levers of government right now. It's people like Bill Barr who has an entire monarchical agenda that he wants to get through that control the levers of power now. I don't know why I can't say that word today. So that's what they're getting out of it, right? So yeah, they can look, I can imagine this party, the Republican Party as it's constituted now, if Trump wins in 2024 and he decides to not run again in 2028, which just because there's a constitutional amendment doesn't mean they'll listen to it, they'll just nominate Ivanka.
Yeah.
And the Lindsey Grahams of the world already kind of completely debased themselves. They'll just go for Ivanka. They don't mind giving the Trump family a monarchical figurehead on American power for as long as his line has a progenitor. As long as they get to control the power behind the scenes, which is what they get to do right now.
Wow. Well, everything that he's done and been doing, the thing that scares me the most now is the post office thing. I mean, the suppressing the vote at that level. And as a lawyer, you're telling me there's really nothing we can do, nothing legally. What
messing with the mail is a federal crime. Everybody who's watched an episode of The Untouchables back in the day, or a couple episodes of Law and Order, messing with the mail is a federal crime. It's a felony. You have to have somebody to prosecute that. Currently, AG Bill Barr is not willing to prosecute mail fraud, so they can get away with mail fraud. If they lose, I mean, I've said this a couple of times now, but Postmaster General DeJong or whatever his name is. He should be aware that if Biden should win and we have a Democratic AG, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren or maybe Adam Schiff, who knows, right? Hey, that some of these crimes that he commits today will be prosecuted in the future, but we have to win first. Because if Democrats don't win, and by a margin, because he's trying to steal it, If Democrats don't win, then they will get away with these crimes.
So what's the best way for people to vote then? The safest way, the surest thing?
Well, I'm going to split those questions. I'll take the last one first because, unfortunately, safety is not something we can think about. The safest way,
I mean, safe that their vote, they'll be able to vote, and it'll count.
Because I'm saying that we are in a point where we have to ask people, and I hate to do this, but we have to ask people to risk their lives to go vote. If you cannot vote early, and by early, I don't mean a week before the election. Again, we're recording this early August, middle August. Former President Barack Obama, still my president, tweeted out today in the middle of August, if you can vote early in your state, vote now. Like today, vote now.
Yeah.
So so you can be sure that your vote counts, and B, it frees up any kind of like last minute crunch, for election officials, and C, so you can go help somebody else vote tomorrow. If you have the opportunity, my state doesn't have early voting this early. I live in New York, but if I did like the right thing, I've already requested my absentee ballot, right? And as soon as that comes in, I will vote. Yeah. So, voting early, like we need to not have election day. We need to have election month.
Yes. Well, we know what we need, but they don't want to give it to us. That's all true. I guess I don't understand why there's Fox News, obviously, which is pretty damaging. But I just cannot believe, no matter however things are spun, that people aren't more upset. It's not just you and me. I mean, everybody should be this upset about the right. If the guy doesn't want you to vote, isn't that a red flag for any thinking human being?
I saw a poll. Trump is losing is winning amongst white people without a college degree, like 60-40. He is getting trounced by everybody else, almost 70-30.
Okay.
That is our divide. There is the aggrieved white base of the Republican Party feels that even if Trump hurts them, he hurts me more, and they are all in on at least hurt the other guys as much as you're hurting us, Donald. Yeah. And that's where it's at. That's all he has to say. All Trump has to do is prove that I'm more, put out by his racist, sexist, misogynist, xenophobic, bigoted policies than a white farmer is put out, and they'll vote for Trump. Wow.
Yeah, that's sadly accurate. Well, I try to get people as upset as I am with my art. And so
which is beautiful, by the way. I mean, I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this with you is that, I think that people need to get this information through any and all medium possible, right? So like I can talk and write, you can draw. Some people visually, they understand it a little bit more viscerally when they see it, right? I use a lot of humor. Sometimes people need that dose of, spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down, right? Like people who can write songs about it should be writing songs about it, right? People who can do interpretive dances about how bad Trump is should be doing interpretive dance, like however it is that you can express to others what is really going on in the country needs to happen. And so I really appreciate your work.
Well, if there's a favorite of yours, I'll send you a poster. So.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I've got some space on my wall still.
Apparently, yeah. Checking it out. Well, listen, that's basically it. I appreciate your participation so much. Like I said, I'm a big fan. And, well, let's just hope things work out.
Absolutely, Michael. Vote early. Vote early.
Thank you, Eli Mystal.